Hey, it's Erica. I just wanted to let you know that you can now listen to Global News What Happened To ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
It was the early 90s, and as Van Halen's hit song Right Now played in the background, the world was about to experience something it had never seen or tasted before. It was a refreshing new take on soft drinks, and it had some rushing to be the first ones to try it. I'm Erica Bella, and today we travel back 30 years to find out what the hype was all about. This is Global News What Happened To Crystal Pepsi. To understand how we got North America's first colorless soda, we first have to look back at a marketing trend from the late 1980s to the early 2000s that often equated transparency with purity. It was called the clear craze, and it was first inspired by Ivory soap's 99.44% pure campaign.
I want my clean as real as Ivory. It's gotta be 99.44. I want my clean as real as Ivory. Nothing less, nothing more.
No deodorants, no heavy perfumes. That's a real clean.
That led to relaunches of personal hygiene products that were clear, dye-free gels, and many electronics turned their cases transparent as well. But it also led to one company's redesign of their famous beverage as being free of artificial dyes, and that's how we got the caffeine-free and preservative-free Crystal Pepsi.
I was the first person ever brought into Pepsi from the food service divisions to run marketing. And so it was a big challenge. And one of the reasons why I was brought in is that Pepsi at that point in time was really struggling with sales. And we really needed to get the business moving.
That's David Novak. And in 1990, he was hired as Executive Vice President of Marketing Sales for Pepsi Cola.
This was a big promotion. And one of the reasons why I was brought in is that we'd had great success at Pizza Hut. We turned the business around and our marketing campaign was great. We had great commercials and people were really excited about what we'd done at Pizza Hut. And so now I was brought in to turn the business around. So one of the first things you have to do is look at the category. At the time, Pepsi was not growing as fast as it had in prior years. And I look at what the reality was in the marketplace is that a lot of what was happening was that water was taking off.
Flavored sparkling water with names like Clearly Canadian and Canadian Arctic have been winning the taste buds of soft drinkers across the country. You can see it happening at the supermarket. A few years ago, New York Seltzer was just about the only flavored water on the market. Now the category takes up 8 feet of shelf space at this store, and it's encroaching on the colas.
All the clear products, all the products that were perceived to be better for you were really growing.
David said he was sitting in his office one day, intent on making a big splash by creating the next big thing to refresh Pepsi.
And I think, hey, if all the clear products are perceived to be better for you, perceived to be healthier, and this is where the consumer is really going, how can we do that with Pepsi-Cola? And it just hit me. I said, why not have a clear Pepsi? And that really started the ball rolling, Erica. That was the thing that said, hey, okay, this was rooted in the reality that people wanted to drink healthier. And I thought, wow, that would be so shocking. I mean, everybody would want to try it. It'd be so different. And this was, I think, Pepsi's first foray into trying to do a better for you type product.
Immediately, David pitched the idea.
So I called up Roger Enrico, who was the chairman of PepsiCo at that time. And I said, Roger, what do you think? He said, well, it sounds like a great idea. Why don't you go share it with customers and see what they have to say? So, I had the idea, I dreamt it up, and I thought, oh boy, here we go. We actually took the product into focus groups and the consumers loved it. And I thought, man, I've really got a great idea to hear. This is just unbelievable, So I said, we got to get this into test market. So I met with our R&D people. Surinder Kumar was the head of R&D. And I said, Surinder, we got to put this product together and take it out to consumers again and see what they think. And so, they loved the concept originally. And then we actually made the product. So then we take the product to consumers. They love the product. And then we go, oh my gosh, Now we really have a home run. We got to get it into test markets.
Crystal Pepsi is a whole new beverage experience with a new flavor. It's not just a regular cola without the color.
Crystal Pepsi tastes to me like a more subtle cola. I think that's the best way to say it. It doesn't taste like any other clear drinks that I've tasted. It's got a different taste.
I think the idea that it's not caramel colored and it's clear makes it seem like it's a lighter drink.
Crystal Pepsi went to Denver, Colorado for a test launch.
When the product came off the manufacturing line, that night, it was the lead story on Dan Rather's CBS Evening News.
Pepsi is hoping for a clear advantage in the cola wars.
It was just a rage. Everybody wanted to get their hands on Crystal Pepsi. This is before your time, but when Coors beer was launched, it was sort of the rage as well. And everybody wanted to get this Rocky Mountain beer. Well, we had this in Colorado and everybody wanted to get it. And so people were shipping it to their friends and, it was really a buzz. And so now I'm thinking, geez, we've got a home run idea here. We got to really rush and get this thing into national. And what does Pepsi do in a big way every year? Well, they always do the Super Bowl. So, I thought, well, we'll use the Super Bowl to launch Crystal Pepsi.
The Pepsi team had about 10 months before the Super Bowl. It would be a huge endeavor to launch the product in such a short amount of time. But David said he was up for the task.
We worked really hard to get things ready to go. And I went to the Pepsi-Cola bottlers, and they're the franchisees, and they basically sell the product to, up and down the street, retailers, grocery stores, Walmart, you pick the outlet, but they basically bottle the product and sell it. And basically what Pepsi did is sold the concentrate to the bottlers, and then they made the product. But so I take it to the Bottling Association leaders, and I say, I've got this really fantastic idea. I want to share it with you. And they said, boy, that's a great idea, David. But there's one problem with it. And I said, what's that? And they said, well, it doesn't taste enough like Pepsi. And I said, well, it's not supposed to taste exactly like Pepsi. We want to have a lighter cola flavors so we don't cannibalize just the base Pepsi usage. We want to add incremental users to our franchise. And they said, yeah, but you're calling it Pepsi, so it needs to taste more like Pepsi. And I said, no, we want to have a lighter, colder flavor. It didn't matter what they had to say. I was in love with this product. Our team was in love with this product. And I was a heat-seeking missile, and I was going to get this product on the Super Bowl.
As you heard early on, people had concerns with the taste of Crystal Pepsi because it didn't taste exactly like the original Pepsi. So I wondered, what did it taste like?
It had that lighter taste. It wouldn't be my favorite product. I mean, I there's nothing in my mind at that time. There was nothing better than a full flavor Pepsi. And I also like the diet Pepsi as well. Those were my two favorite products. But it fit the bill. In marketing, you have a concept that you lay out. It says this is a lighter cola flavor, no caffeine, not as rich, not as sweet. Just a lighter taste, not as heavy. That's the best way I can really describe it.
And the world was about to get to taste it for themselves. January 31st, 1993. Super Bowl 27 at Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena. The Buffalo Bills faced the Dallas Cowboys. Country singer Garth Brooks sang the U.S. national anthem. O.J. Simpson did the coin toss. And Michael Jackson performed the halftime show. Crystal Pepsi officially launched.
We launched the product on the Super Bowl. It was, it was just like a rush to the finish. We put it on the Super Bowl, and it was the only product in the history of Pepsi-Cola Company that at that time that had been launched at a premium price. Because see, the bottlers, they could price the product line. Okay. They're in charge of pricing. We couldn't tell them how to price it. We could recommend that they price it lower, but it was their job. So I'm really mad at the bottlers. Why are you pricing this so high? Let's get trial of this product. They said, oh, don't worry about trial. Everybody's going to try the product because it's such a novelty, but it's going to be like a hula hoop. people will try it, but they'll never buy it again. It'll be like a novelty product, and that's it. The repeat will be very low. And I said, well, we'll see about that. Well, we launched the product on the Super Bowl. We actually had a commercial that positioned it as a very hip new product. Right Now was the song taken from Van Halen. We worked out a deal with them. And, so it was, everything seemed to be great. And the product just flew off the shelf.
But as the bottlers predicted, after a sharp spike in sales, the product sort of dropped off.
People who tried the product did not really try it again. And you know what the main reason was, Erica? It didn't taste enough like Pepsi. And so the bottlers were right. First 3 months, it was the peak of the sales. And then from that point on, the sales really kind of declined, because people didn't go back and buy it again. So it stayed on shelf, I think, for 2.5 years, but it never was a big product. When you have something that the grocers really think is a big idea, they'll give you lots of facings, lots of distribution, lots of displays. After that first quarter, everything started to fade.
Jordy Durden was one of the lucky ones that got to try Crystal Pepsi when it first came out.
I remember seeing it in the 7-Eleven or the QT, because I lived on the East Coast at the time, so it was like an East Coast gas station franchise called QT. So I'd see it there. The first time I remember tasting it, I do remember tasting because it was like this crystal clear drink that was a cola. So it was like the first time I ever tried something like that, outside of cream sodas and stuff. Yeah, it was a weird experience. I remember it's because it's clear, you kind of expect like a water taste, or like a Sprite taste, I guess. But then you get the cola, which is a strange kind of thing. And I mean, it tastes like cola. It tastes like Pepsi tastes. But the weird thing is because it's clear, it messes with your mind and you can't taste it 100% at the first taste. So it's like one of those things where you taste it and you're like, does it taste like Pepsi? You taste it again and you're like, okay, yeah, I guess that tastes like Pepsi.
Jordy says there was one other thing about Crystal Pepsi that stood out to him, even at a young age.
So the most distinct part, I think, of the cans that stuck with people wasn't the fact that it was Crystal Pepsi, but it was the packaging behind it. Because it was like a really interesting packaging that stood out from like Pepsi's normal can design. It was like a really dynamic can with like the blue gradient and like the red pop and like those like streaking lines.
But then, just as quickly as it appeared, it was gone.
I wouldn't say when it first disappeared, I really missed it. There was so much sodas at the time and they were putting out new flavors all the time and mixing up things and the packaging. I didn't miss Crystal Pepsi when it was gone because I don't think I remember specifically when I saw it leave shelves. It was just one of those things where as time went on, you're like, oh, I guess that soda is not around anymore.
The failure of Crystal Pepsi was a big lesson for David Novak as well.
I had a really great idea. I mean, it was a fantastic idea. The concept testing was great. The initial trial was great. And if I would have listened to the bottlers and made it taste more like Pepsi, given it more Pepsi-Cola flavor notes, I'm convinced that product would still be around today and it'd be fantastic. So it's one of those learnings in my life where it was a great idea, poorly executed. Sometimes ideas just don't work out the way you think they would. And interestingly, we actually had a very good year from a profit standpoint because people did price the product at a higher level and they made more money on it. And so, it wasn't as good from a volume perspective, but it was great from a profit perspective. And that's probably one of the reasons why I didn't get fired.
In 1997, David Novak left PepsiCo and went to be the president and vice chairman of Yum Brands. After its demise in the early 90s, Crystal Pepsi became a bit of a running joke. SNL even did a parody commercial, but instead of cola, it was Crystal Gravy.
Earth wasn't created in 7 days. There are some things man will never improve on. Don't take what you're given. Why can't we be cleaner,
In 2014, Time magazine released its 10 worst product fails of all time, and Crystal Pepsi was given the number 3 spot, following Hewlett-Packard's touchpad released in 2011 to compete with Apple's iPad and Ford's Edsel released in 1957. But the soft drink earned a bit of a cult status, and as Geordie Durden got older, he began to appreciate Crystal Pepsi's legacy. In 2016, he started collecting, thanks in part to Vaporwave. If you're wondering, Vaporwave is a microgenre of electronic music, a visual art style, and an internet meme that emerged in the early 2010s, defined in part by its slowed-down, chopped and screwed samples of smooth jazz, elevator, R&B, and lounge music from the 1980s and 1990s.
So that music kind of got me started into it. I was listening to it a lot, and it was like, I'm like, oh yeah, or like it reminds me of when I was a kid and I'd watch these shows. I had like the little beginnings to my Goosebumps collection at the time kind of started. I had just picked up a few books like at thrift stores being like, oh, this was one that I liked when I was a kid.
But his passion for collecting began to grow beyond Goosebumps.
Food collection is another big part of the collecting for me because 80s and 90s, like food marketing and stuff was big. The branding of everything at the time, it had a lot more energy. And I think I'm naturally drawn to that energy. It could be because I grew up in the 90s and like that's like my baseline for like how I see like, yeah, things should have lots of colors because that's how I grew up.
In 2016, a soda he remembered well was about to make a surprise limited appearance.
Yeah, so I didn't see it like marketing or anything for it really. It wasn't until I was at like a gas station, kind of like when I was a kid, where I just saw it back on shelves. I was like, what? They brought back Crystal Pepsi? That's crazy. I was excited to see it back. It was more of just like a trip to even see it again. And like, I was into Vaporwave at that time. And like I was saying, like Crystal Pepsi, like the packaging design and stuff was a big part of Vaporwave, like post-meta-modern art stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, Crystal Pepsi. I'm familiar that everybody's back into Crystal Pepsi. But the shock more so came that like Pepsi acknowledged like this fan, like growing, like, hey, we just bring back Crystal Pepsi because, you know, from their standpoint, it would be like, hey, we tried this thing and people didn't buy it like they wanted to, like we wanted them to, so we got rid of it. So they brought it back only for the fans really at that point. And it was cool, you know, and I knew it was going to be a limited thing. I think they were even saying on like the packaging at the time, it's like a limited time thing.
And during that 2016 relaunch, Geordie said he drank it every chance he could.
I distinctly remember going to see Ready Player One and like having a Crystal Pepsi and like being like, oh, wow, this is an awesome moment. Like I can watch a movie about 80s love while drinking a 90s drink. But I didn't save any of the bottles because I was an idiot.
Since it was out for a limited time, Geordie regrets not holding on to some bottles.
People are holding on to these things because at first people were like, oh, it's just like a gimmick, and you know, but then they realize it's like, well, that was the one chance to grab like a Pepsi can, you know, the way it used to look, not have it be like over 40 years old and like likely kind of a dirty can, right?
And since then, Crystal Pepsi has become a bit of a distant memory. The soda that once was. But in 2022, on the 30-year anniversary of its launch, Geordie would finally get his wish. In January this year, Geordie Durden was alerted to a new sweepstakes.
I'm so obsessed with like nostalgic re-releases that I literally have like Google search terms like saved. So I get like emails if an article or keyword comes up about something. And sure enough, I got an email that came up like saying something about Crystal Pepsi. And then I dig into it a little bit more and I'm like, oh, there's a Twitter giveaway going on. And the rules for the giveaway, I believe, if I remember correctly, they were you had to send in a photo of yourself in the 90s to be like able to be entered into the sweepstakes. So you like tag Pepsi on social media or Twitter, and then with the image and say something. And a bunch of people did it. I did it. I got some people in my family and friends to do it as well to like up my chances of being able to win. And then, yeah, it was like, it started on a Friday, it went over the weekend, and then on like Monday morning, got the email from Pepsi saying that I was chosen as a winner. I won. I was super stoked. I couldn't believe I had won because it was like, I never win sweepstakes and giveaways. I always enter in and never win. So it was like one of those cool moments to win.
Jordy was told his Pepsi would be shipped out in a month. Day by day, week by week, he waited.
But then month and 2 weeks go by, it didn't show up. I was like, oh no, did like something go wrong with shipping? Did maybe like UPS or FedEx like drop it or ship it to the wrong place? So I check in with Pepsi and they were like, oh no, it's just been delayed. It'll be out like 2 more weeks.
He waited and waited. It took months, but in March of this year,
I got the notification that something was in my mailbox and I went down and I picked up the box. I'm like, yeah, that feels like there's some soda in there. Okay, yeah, nice. It finally showed up. This is awesome. Crystal Pepsi, it's got like the 30-year anniversary mark on the front label. So that's really cool. So like distinctly from this year. And it's just cool to have again in the collection because it's like, you know, I don't have to keep kicking my butt for not having saved Crystal Pepsi back in 2016.
Jordy won 6 bottles of the 30th anniversary Crystal Pepsi. So I wondered, was he planning on drinking any of them?
I haven't opened any yet. I am going to drink one, but I think I'm going to save it for a special occasion. That's what I'm going to do because I don't really want to open the other ones. Part of me considers them like cool collectibles, obviously, but also like a little bit of like an investment. Like right now, I think because they're so limited, you can get one bottle on eBay for around like $40 right now. Yeah. So like a $40 can or bottle of Pepsi is like, and they gave you 6 of them. Like that's a pretty significant sale. I see people in there saying they've got like 12 available. They went out to a very limited number of people. So I want to hold on to as many as I can, drink one on a special occasion.
When Jordy opens up that prized Crystal Pepsi, he'll have David Novak to thank for it. And so I had one final question for him. Would he have changed anything about Crystal Pepsi?
You know, I made a lot of mistakes. This was one of the big ones, but I think all those mistakes give you experience and help you become who you are. And so, you know, it's one of those things I wish I could do over, but on the other hand, I learned so much from it. This product was, I think, one of the top 10 products introduced in 1992. You know, it was like up for product of the year. But it's in test market. And then after what happened in 1993 and a couple of years later, I think Time Magazine in the year 2000, Crystal Pepsi made the list of one of the top, I forget what the number was, but one of the top 100 failures of the last century, of that century. So, you know, went from going from being a genius to not so smart in a hurry. Okay. But, you know, the learning that I got out of that was that, you know, you really have to involve people. You really have to listen to people. You really have to hear what they have to say. And, you know, some people, when I started out, I used to think some people will say it can't be done every step of the way. And it was sort of like, my thought was, they just didn't get how smart I was. Okay. They're just going to say it can't be done, but you got to stick to your conviction and you got to make it happen. Well, I think conviction is really good, but the first thing you got to do is to determine whether what they're saying that's a potential issue, is it right or not? Okay. And, you know, then sometimes you'll find out that it's not right. And then you can have courage and conviction. Yeah, those people are saying it can't be done, but you got to stick to your guns as a leader and go forward. But boy, the big learning for me is make sure you know make sure you know you're right. Make sure that the issues that they're bringing out are not really issues. And if they are issues, fix them.
It's been 30 years since the tumultuous release of Crystal Pepsi. But I was thirsty to know if we would ever see Crystal Pepsi back on shelves again. I reached out to Pepsi Canada asking for an interview, and I received a statement from Reed Black, the director of Pepsi Canada. It reads, quote, "First released in 1992, Crystal Pepsi is a timeless fan favorite that is returning to Canada this June for an exclusive limited time. Crystal Pepsi is a culturally iconic cola, and 90s trends are unabashedly making an epic comeback. So it's time for Crystal Pepsi lovers, old and new, to hop on the nostalgia bandwagon," unquote. Jordy said he would eventually like to see a full relaunch of the soda.
Honestly, I'd love to see it back on the shelf. Like, I wouldn't be as selfish to be like, no, my Crystal Pepsi would be worth less because they would put it out. I'm much more about just being able to like have that nostalgia back, you know, even if it's for a limited time. Part of what I'm always trying to do is like time travel, so to say, where it's like, if you get enough things around you from a certain area, you can almost kind of like feel like you're in that era. Like, you know, put on a 90s movie on an old CRT TV and drink Crystal Pepsi while eating some Pizza Hut, you know, and like be surrounded by all of this stuff. And then it's like you're almost like you teleported back to the 80s and 90s, you know, temporarily, and you're just like indulging. So I kind of like to geek out and do that whenever I get the chance. And like, because of these like product resurgences, it's like allowed me to be able to do that.
They say you can't turn back the clock, but we sure hope that you can wind it up, and hopefully this time we can all get a taste of that ever elusive Crystal Pepsi. Thank you for joining me this week. Global News What Happened To is written and produced by me, Erica Vela, with producer Dila Velazquez. Our audio producers are Rosalind Kufor and Rob Johnson. Thanks to Emily Dunseith, who helped with chasing, and also a special thanks goes to Drew Hasselbeck, supervising national online journalist for Global News. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and please share it with a friend. It will help us grow the show and bring you more incredible stories. You can also help us by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. You can also reach out to me personally. We are always looking for stories, so if there's a story you want us to revisit, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Erica Vela or email me at erica.vela@globalnews.ca. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.